I thought my mom was bluffing the first time she said she'd cut me out of her life. But when she looked me in the eyes and calmly said, "Obey me or I will disown you," I realized she wasn't joking. People think family control only happens in extreme households. They imagine screaming matches and broken dishes. They don't imagine quiet dinners, polite smiles, and a mother who can destroy your future with a single sentence. I grew up believing my mom and I were a team. After my dad left when I was 8, it was just the two of us in a small suburban town outside Portland. She worked double shifts, I studied hard. We told each other everything, or at least I thought we did. From the outside, we looked like the perfect mother-daughter duo. She volunteered at school events, she brought homemade cookies to my teachers. Everyone called her strong, devoted, selfless. But behind closed doors, our relationship revolved around one unspoken rule. My life had to follow her plan. At first, it didn't feel like family control. It felt like love. She chose my clothes when I was younger because she had better taste. She picked my extracurriculars because she wanted me to have opportunities. She even edited my homework sometimes, insisting colleges expected perfection. When I was 13, I realized something was off. I wanted to join the art club. She signed me up for debate instead. "You'll thank me later," she said sweetly, and I did what I always did. I obeyed. By 15, the emotional conflict started creeping in. It wasn't loud, it was subtle, like a slow crack in glass. If I disagreed with her, she'd go quiet for hours. If I made plans without asking, she'd remind me how much she sacrificed for me. Every decision became a negotiation I could never win. Friends called it strict parenting, teachers called it dedication. But deep down, I felt something heavier: pressure, guilt, fear. The first real disown threat came during my junior year of high school. I had just been accepted into a summer art program in Seattle. It was competitive, prestigious, and for the first time, it was something I wanted, just for me. When I showed her the acceptance email, I expected a hug, maybe even tears of pride. Instead, she stared at the screen like it had personally offended her. "You're not going," she said flatly. I laughed nervously. "Mom, this is huge. It could help me get into—" "No." Her voice sharpened. "You're staying here. You have debate nationals. Scholarships depend on it." That night turned into our first real argument. Not raised voices, not slammed doors, just a cold, controlled conversation that left me shaking. "You don't understand," she said, folding her hands neatly on the table. "Everything I've done has been for you, and if you start making selfish choices—" She paused. Her eyes locked onto mine. "Then maybe you don't need me anymore." I felt the ground shift beneath me. The emotional conflict hit so hard I could barely breathe. "Are you saying—" "What?" I whispered. Her expression didn't change. "If you choose your own path over this family, don't expect to still be part of it." That was the first disown threat, and it wouldn't be the last. From that moment on, every decision I made came with a silent warning attached: obey or lose everything. At school, I smiled and laughed like a normal teenager, but inside, my life had turned into a quiet, suffocating teen drama no one else could see, and I had no idea how far my mother was willing to go to keep control. After that first disown threat, something inside our home shifted. Nothing exploded, nothing dramatic happened overnight, but every conversation started to feel like a test I could fail at any moment. I stopped mentioning the Seattle art program. I told my teachers I couldn't go because of family commitments. They nodded politely. No one questioned it. At home, my mom acted as if everything was normal. She made my favorite pasta. She asked about my grades. She even hugged me before bed like she used to. That's what made the family control harder to recognize. It wasn't obvious cruelty. It was affection with conditions. "You're such a good daughter," she'd say when I followed her plans. "I don't know what I'd do if you ever changed." Those words wrapped around me like invisible chains. Senior year arrived faster than I expected. College applications dominated every conversation. Or rather, her version of my future dominated every conversation. "You're applying to Stanford, Columbia, and NYU," she announced one evening, sliding a printed list across the table. I blinked. "Mom, those are amazing schools, but I was thinking about RISD or maybe Pratt for illustration." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Art is a hobby, not a life. The familiar knot of emotional conflict tightened in my chest. It's not just a hobby to me. She sighed slowly, like I was exhausting her. "After everything I've done, you want to throw your future away on drawings?" "It's not throwing it away," I said quietly. "It's what I love." The silence that followed felt heavier than any argument. She stood up, collected the plates, and began washing them with precise, controlled movements. "You're being influenced," she said calmly. "Teenagers always go through this phase: rebellion, confusion." "It's not a phase." She turned off the water, finally faced me. "Then we have a serious problem." There it was again, not loud, not emotional, just cold certainty. Over the next few weeks, the family control tightened. She insisted on reviewing every application essay. She rewrote entire paragraphs, replacing my voice with something more impressive, more logical, less me. When acceptance letters started arriving, she opened them before I got home. She claimed she was organizing everything, but it felt like she was curating my life. One afternoon, I came home to find a thick envelope on the kitchen counter. RISD, my dream school. My heart pounded as I reached for it, but the envelope had already been opened. My mom sat at the table, hands folded neatly. Her expression was impossible to read. "Well," she said softly, "you got in." For a second, pure happiness flooded through me. I had done it, despite everything. Then I saw the second envelope beside it. Columbia University. "I accepted for you," she continued, her tone casual, final. "Early decision, it's the best choice for your future." The air left my lungs. "What do you mean you accepted?" "You hesitated," she replied, "so I handled it." The emotional conflict inside me exploded into panic. "Mom, you can't accept college offers for me. That's my decision." She leaned back in her chair, calm, unbothered. "I'm your parent. Until you're financially independent, your decisions affect this household." "This is my life," I whispered. Her expression hardened slightly. "And this is my investment." The words hit like ice water. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just strict parenting. This was ownership. "I want to go to RISD. I already got partial scholarship. I can apply for more. I can work." She raised a hand, and then she said the words that would haunt me for months. "If you reject Columbia, if you embarrass this family, then don't come back here." My chest tightened. "Because if you walk away from the future I built for you," she finished quietly, "then I will consider you no longer my daughter." Another disown threat. Clearer this time, sharper. The house felt smaller, the walls closer. My entire future suddenly balanced on a single decision, and for the first time in my life, I wondered what would happen if I stopped obeying. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the same sentence echoing in my head: "I will consider you no longer my daughter." The second disown threat felt different from the first. It wasn't vague. It wasn't emotional. It was a clear contract: obey or lose your family. At breakfast the next morning, my mom acted like nothing had happened. She poured coffee, checked her phone, asked if I wanted eggs. The normalcy made the emotional conflict even worse. I felt like I was standing on the edge of something huge while she calmly discussed grocery lists. "I need your final confirmation for Columbia today," she said, sliding a form across the table. "Deadline is at noon." My hands stayed in my lap. "I'm still thinking." Her eyes lifted slowly. That tiny pause was enough to fill the room with tension. "There's nothing to think about," she replied. "This is the logical choice." "It's your logical choice," I said softly, "not mine." Silence. She set her coffee down with careful precision. That was always the warning sign, when she became too calm. "You're being emotional," she said. "Teenagers confuse feelings with reality. I'm protecting you from making a mistake." The familiar language of family control wrapped around me again. Protection, sacrifice, responsibility. But something inside me had started to shift. "I appreciate everything you've done," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But this decision, it has to be mine." Her expression changed, just slightly. Not anger, not sadness, disappointment. "You're sounding ungrateful," she said quietly. The guilt hit instantly. It always did. Years of conditioning made sure of that. "I'm not ungrateful," I insisted. "I just want to study something I actually love." "And what happens when that love doesn't pay your rent?" she asked. "When you can't afford health care? When you realize passion doesn't equal stability?" Every word felt rehearsed, like she'd been preparing this argument for years. "I'll figure it out," I whispered. She shook her head slowly. "No, you won't, and I refuse to watch you ruin your life." There it was again, the assumption that my life belonged to her. The conversation ended without resolution, but the atmosphere in the house changed immediately. For the next week, the family control became suffocating. She stopped asking about my day, stopped cooking dinner for both of us, stopped using my name. Instead, everything became transactional. "There's food in the fridge. Your laundry is done. Don't forget your debate practice." No warmth, no affection, just distance. It felt like I was already being erased. At school, my friends talked about dorm decorations and campus tours. They compared scholarships and roommate plans. Their excitement felt like another universe. Meanwhile, I was living inside a quiet teen drama that no one else could see. One afternoon, my best friend Lily noticed something was off. "You look exhausted," she said gently as we sat in the library. "Are you okay?" The question almost broke me, but I forced a smile. "Just college stress." She studied my face for a moment, unconvinced. "You know you can tell me anything, right?" I nodded, but I didn't speak. Because how do you explain that your own mother might erase you from her life if you choose the wrong school? How do you explain that love in your house comes with terms and conditions? That night, when I got home, I found a single envelope on my bed. No note, no explanation. Inside was a printed document, a budget breakdown. Tuition, housing, food, transportation. At the bottom, highlighted in yellow, was a single line: "Financial support contingent on compliance with family expectations." My hands started shaking. This wasn't just pressure anymore. It was a contract. And for the first time, I realized something terrifying. My mom wasn't just using a disown threat to scare me. She was preparing to follow through. The document sat on my desk for 3 days. I didn't touch it. I didn't mention it. But it followed me everywhere, like a silent countdown. Every interaction with my mom became painfully polite. We spoke like coworkers sharing an office, not family sharing a home. No warmth, no conflict, just tension wrapped in quiet routine. That was the worst part of her family control. It never exploded, it suffocated. On the 4th night, she knocked on my bedroom door, softly, almost gently. "Can we talk?" she asked. I already knew what the conversation would be about. Still, my stomach tightened as I nodded. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table. The same table where she'd packed my school lunches for years. The same table where she now placed a single sheet of paper between us, a printed Columbia enrollment confirmation, already filled out. All it needed was my signature. "I've given you time," she said calmly. "I assume you're ready to make the responsible choice." My chest felt hollow. The emotional conflict inside me had reached a breaking point. "I can't sign that," I whispered. Her face remained expressionless. "Explain." "I want RSID," I said, forcing the words out before fear could stop me. "I know it's not what you planned, but it's my future. I need to choose it." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the refrigerator hum seemed to disappear. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it, and that made it worse. "So you're choosing a hobby over your family." "I'm not choosing against you," I said quickly. "I'm choosing for myself." She leaned back slowly, studied me like a stranger. "You really believe that?" she asked. The question felt like a trap, but I nodded anyway. For a moment, I thought she might yell, or cry, or try to convince me one last time. Instead, she stood up, walked to the counter, picked up her phone, then she dialed a number and put it on speaker. "Hello?" a familiar voice answered. My aunt. "Hi," my mom said evenly. "I just wanted to let you know that Emma has decided to go against the family. She's rejecting Columbia." My throat closed. "Mom!" She raised a hand without looking at me. "Yes, I warned her what that would mean, but she's made her choice." Each word felt deliberate, public, final. The call ended after less than a minute, but the message was clear. She turned back to me. "I won't beg you. I won't fight you. You're almost an adult." Her eyes met mine, cold, certain. "But understand this clearly. If you walk out of this house to pursue that school, you walk out of this family." The final disown threat landed like a physical blow. No anger, no raised voice, just a statement of fact. My vision blurred. For a second, I couldn't breathe. "Were you serious?" I whispered. "I've never been more serious," she replied. "Family requires loyalty. If you reject ours, then you're choosing independence." Independence. The word sounded noble, but in that moment, it felt like exile. I looked around the kitchen, the photos on the fridge, the worn wooden cabinets, every memory of childhood wrapped inside those walls. Was I really about to lose all of it over one decision? The emotional conflict inside me reached its peak. Fear battled with something new, something fragile but growing. Clarity. If I signed that paper, I would keep my home, keep my family, keep her approval. But I would lose myself. My hands trembled as I pushed the Columbia form back across the table. "I can't live a life that isn't mine," I said quietly. For the first time, a flicker of real emotion crossed her face. Not anger, not sadness, disappointment. "Then you should start packing," she replied. And just like that, my place in the family was over. I didn't pack that night. I sat on my bed, staring at the walls I'd grown up with, trying to process what had just happened. My mom went to sleep like it was any other evening. No shouting, no slamming doors, just quiet footsteps down the hallway and the soft click of her bedroom door. That calmness hurt more than anger ever could. By morning, the reality settled in. The final disown threat hadn't been a bluff. She meant it. There was no dramatic eviction, no bags thrown onto the lawn, just a simple absence of support. When I walked into the kitchen, she was already dressed for work. She didn't look at me. "There's cereal in the cabinet," she said neutrally. "I'll be changing the Wi-Fi password tonight, and you'll need to arrange your own phone plan by the end of the week." Each sentence was practical, efficient, emotionally empty. The family control had shifted into something colder, detachment. I nodded silently. Arguing would only give her more power. That morning, something inside me changed. Not dramatically, not in a cinematic burst of confidence. It was quieter than that. If she was going to treat this like a contract, then I would too. I spent the day at school moving through classes like a ghost. But during lunch, instead of hiding in the library, I sat down with Lily. "I need help," I said simply. She didn't ask 100 questions, didn't demand explanations. She just nodded. That was the moment my silent strategy began. This wasn't about revenge in the dramatic sense. I wasn't going to scream or expose family secrets online. I wasn't going to fight her directly, because direct fights were her territory, her expertise. Instead, I focused on independence, carefully, quietly, logically. Step 1. Finances. I met with my school counselor after class and explained briefly that I might be losing financial support from home. I didn't mention the disown threat in detail, just enough truth to be understood. Within 2 days, she connected me with emergency scholarship resources, housing options, and part-time job listings near campus. It felt surreal, like building a life from scratch while still living in the same house. At home, the emotional atmosphere remained frozen. We passed each other in hallways like distant roommates. No arguments, no affection. But underneath that silence, the emotional conflict kept evolving. Every time she saw me filling out forms or making calls, her expression tightened slightly. Not enough to comment, just enough to notice. She expected panic, begging, a last-minute surrender. Instead, I gave her calm. That was the first crack in her system of family control. One evening, she found me at the dining table reviewing financial aid documents. "You're serious about this?" she said flatly. "Yes." "You really believe you can survive without family support?" The question carried an edge of disbelief, maybe even curiosity. "I don't know," I admitted honestly, "but I'm willing to try." She studied me for a long moment, as if searching for weakness. I didn't give her any. What she didn't realize was that this wasn't just about going to art school anymore. It was about something deeper. For years, her authority depended on one assumption, that I needed her more than I needed myself. So I stopped arguing, stopped defending, stopped reacting. Instead, I prepared. I secured a small campus job in advance, applied for every micro-scholarship I could find, arranged temporary housing with Lily's cousin near RSID for the first semester. Every step was quiet, practical, invisible. The silent phase of my life had begun, and without realizing it, my mom had already started losing control. The strangest part of those final weeks at home was how peaceful everything looked. From the outside, nothing seemed wrong. 2 people sharing a house, no shouting, no obvious teen drama. But underneath that quiet surface, everything had changed. My mom stopped asking where I was going, stopped checking my grades, stopped reminding me about deadlines. It was as if she'd already erased me from her future. At first, the distance hurt more than the disown threat itself. I kept waiting for a moment of softness, a sudden change of heart, some sign that she might choose me over control. It never came. Instead, she doubled down on her version of dignity. Cold politeness, short, efficient conversations, total emotional withdrawal. That's when I fully understood the depth of her family control. It wasn't just about making decisions for me. It was about maintaining authority at all costs, even if it meant losing a relationship. So I stopped hoping for reconciliation and focused entirely on building my exit. Every afternoon after school, I worked a short shift at a local cafe. Nothing glamorous, just enough to start saving. Every night, I filled out more forms, scholarships, grants, housing confirmations. The routine became strangely calming. For the first time in years, my future depended on my own actions, not her approval. Still, the emotional conflict didn't disappear overnight. Some nights I lay awake wondering if I was making the biggest mistake of my life. Was independence worth losing my family? Was I being selfish? Those doubts lingered until the night everything finally became clear. It was a Thursday, rain tapping softly against the windows. I had just finished printing my final enrollment confirmation for RSID. When I walked into the living room, I heard my mom on the phone. She didn't notice me at first. "I've done everything I could," she was saying calmly, "but she's choosing this path. Sometimes you have to let children fail to understand reality." A quiet pause, then a soft laugh. "Yes, I won't make it easy. If I give in now, she'll never respect boundaries again." My chest tightened. The words settled, slowly, heavily. This disown threat wasn't just about protecting me, it was a strategy, a lesson she intended to teach. She wasn't letting me go because she believed in independence. She was letting me go because she expected me to fail and return obedient. For years, I'd believed our conflict came from fear, that she was scared for my future, scared of losing me. But in that moment, I realized something painful. She wasn't afraid of losing me. She was afraid of losing control. The emotional conflict inside me shifted into something calmer, clearer. If she expected me to crawl back, then the most powerful response wasn't anger, it was success. Not loud success, not revenge designed to hurt her, just quiet proof that her system of family control wasn't necessary. The next morning, I finalized everything. Housing confirmed, financial aid walked in, part-time campus jobs secured. By the time graduation arrived, my life was already waiting for me in another city. On my last night in that house, I packed a single suitcase. Clothes, sketchbooks, important documents. I paused at my bedroom door and looked back once, not with anger, not with regret, just with acceptance. Downstairs, my mom sat at the kitchen table reading. She glanced up briefly as I walked toward the door. "You're leaving tomorrow?" she asked. "Yes." A small nod, nothing more. No hug, no goodbye, no apology. Just silence. And as I stepped outside into the cool evening air, I realized something unexpected. For the first time in my life, I felt completely free.
Moving to Rhode Island felt like stepping into another universe. The air smelled like salt and coffee instead of quiet tension. No one monitored my schedule. No one questioned my choices. For the first few weeks, survival mode took over. Classes, work shifts, budget spreadsheets. There was no time to dwell on the past, and honestly, that helped. The emotional conflict that once filled my chest slowly began to loosen. Without constant pressure, I could finally hear my own thoughts. RISD was everything I'd hoped for: chaotic, creative, alive. Students painted at midnight, debated ideas in hallways, shared portfolios over cheap takeout. For the first time, I didn't feel like I had to justify loving art. But independence came with a cost. There were nights I ate instant noodles for dinner, weeks when my bank balance dipped into uncomfortable territory, moments when exhaustion made me question everything. Still, I didn't go back. Not once. Because every time doubt crept in, I remembered her words. Once she realizes how hard the world is, she'll come back. That expectation became fuel. I worked harder than I ever had before, picked up freelance illustration gigs online, entered small competitions, applied for every grant available. Slowly, quietly, things started to shift. By my second semester, one of my digital illustrations won a regional student award. Nothing huge, but enough to come with a modest cash prize and some unexpected exposure. A local design studio reached out for a short-term internship, paid, flexible, exactly what I needed. For the first time, survival felt less like a struggle and more like momentum. Meanwhile, back home, silence stretched into months. No calls, no messages, no updates. The disown threat had become reality. We were strangers. At first, that hurt. Then it became normal. Eventually, it became peaceful. Until one afternoon near the end of my first year. I was leaving class when my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it. Almost. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. A pause. Then a voice I hadn't heard in nearly a year. Emma?" My steps stopped automatically. Every muscle in my body went still. "Yes." Another pause. Longer this time. Uncertain. "I heard you're doing well," my mom said carefully. The words felt strange coming from her, like she was speaking a language she wasn't fluent in. "I'm okay," I replied. She cleared her throat softly. "I saw your name online, an article about student artists. Your work was featured." Of course she'd found it. My small award had come with a university press release. Nothing viral, but public enough. "That's nice," I said quietly. Silence settled between us again, but this time it felt different, less controlled, more fragile. "I assumed," she began slowly, "that you might struggle more." There it was, the expectation she'd built everything on. I didn't respond right away. I didn't need to, because the reality spoke for itself. The family control she once relied on was gone, and without it, I hadn't collapsed. I'd grown. "I'm managing," I said finally. "I have work, classes, good people around me." Another long pause. Then, very softly, "I see." No apology, no dramatic reconciliation, just a quiet recognition that her prediction was wrong. That was the moment karma truly landed, not in a loud confrontation, not in a dramatic downfall, but in the simple, undeniable proof that I didn't need her control to succeed. That phone call lasted less than 5 minutes. No dramatic reunion, no emotional apologies, just careful words and long pauses filled with everything we didn't say. After we hung up, I stood outside the design building for a while, staring at the campus lawn. Students walked past laughing. Someone played music from an open window. Life moved forward like it always did. But inside me, something had quietly settled. For years, my life had revolved around family control, what she wanted, what she expected, what she believed was best. Breaking away felt like stepping off a cliff. The emotional conflict nearly consumed me in those final months at home. Guilt, fear, doubt, and of course, the constant echo of that disown threat. At first, I thought losing my family would destroy me, that I'd never recover from being cut off, that independence would feel like loneliness. But the truth turned out to be more complicated. Freedom wasn't loud. It wasn't a movie moment with triumphant music. It was quiet mornings making my own schedule, late nights working on projects I actually cared about, friendships built on choice instead of obligation. Slowly, I built a life that belonged to me. The old teen drama that defined my world faded into something smaller, just a chapter, not my entire story. Over the next year, my relationship with my mom remained distant but civil. Occasional short calls, holiday texts, careful conversations that avoided the past. She never fully apologized. I never demanded one. Because by then, I understood something important. Closure doesn't always come from other people. Sometimes it comes from the life you build without them.
The old patterns of family control couldn't survive once I stopped participating. Without fear to reinforce them, they lost their power. And the disown threat that once felt terrifying, it slowly lost its weight too. Being disowned didn't erase my identity. It didn't erase my future. If anything, it forced me to discover who I was without someone else's expectations shaping every move. That realization changed everything. I stopped chasing approval that came with conditions, stopped measuring my worth by someone else's standards, stopped believing love had to be earned through obedience. Instead, I built something steadier: self-trust, boundaries, a sense of direction that didn't depend on permission. Sometimes people ask if I regret choosing my own path, if I ever wish I'd just obeyed and kept the peace. Honestly, no, because peace built on silence isn't really peace, and love built on control isn't really love. Walking away from that environment was the hardest decision I'd ever made, but it also gave me the chance to build a life that actually felt like mine. Even now, years later, I still think about how easily things could have gone differently. How many people stay trapped in quiet emotional conflict because they're afraid of losing family. So I'll leave you with this question. If someone you loved gave you the same ultimatum, obedience or exile, would you sacrifice your future to keep them happy, or would you risk everything to finally live for yourself?